Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy DeYoung. Welcome to Prophecy Today video. You know, many times you hear me say on this broadcast and when I'm preaching in churches or conferences that what we are doing is not looking for signs, but we're listening for a sound. Many people are looking for signs for the rapture of the church. We're listening for a sound, the sound of the trumpet and Jesus to shout and the archangel to shout. But on today's look at the book, we're going to study the greatest sign for the rapture of the church. Stay tuned, and I'll explain. I had some great, very important, interesting conversations this weekend with our broadcast partners here on Prophecy Today weekend. You need to listen to these interviews that I had. Broadcast partners who help us to understand what's happening in our world. You can go to our website. You can listen at PTRN, Prophecy Today Radio Network, to every conversation I had, because it'll be so informative for you to understand the times in which we're living. Again, that address is prophecytoday.com, PTRN, Prophecy Today Radio Network. When you go there, you'll hear Colonel Bob McGinnis. He's out of the Washington, D.C. area. We talked about Iran's preparations for a war and the potential for a development of a nuclear weapon of mass destruction that would be made into a warhead put atop one of those Shahab missiles, the long-range missile that can hit any target in Israel. And we talked about that with David Dolan, our Middle East News Update, and how Israel itself is in great discussions about a preemptive strike. Even somebody saying maybe a Christmas surprise for the Iranians. Well, we don't know the details about when that is going to take place and or if it will indeed take place. But with David, we talked about it and what the possibilities are. Itamar Marcus helped us to look at the Palestinian Authority, and they say because the United Nations Security Council is not going to move their bid for a Palestinian state, the unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state to be made, that the Palestinian people may revert to violence. And he explained why that probably will be the case. And Dr. Rob Congdon, we found him just outside of Oxford in England. We discussed the Euro crisis. You need to understand the insight that Rob was able to bring to the table. The new plan being put forth by Germany and France, and it may have the European member states of the European Union on two different tracks, a fast track and a slower track. Kind of fits into Bible prophecy. These conversations will indeed give you insight that you need. These geopolitical reports are very important in the times in which we're living. And my conversations are there on our website, prophecytoday.com. You need to listen. But I did have a conversation with my son, Jim. I thought it was really important. He was the project leader in the project of our new documentary on the rebuilding of the Third Temple. It's entitled Ready to Rebuild, Revisited. We've had a documentary that we produced about 20 years ago. It's basically been up to date, but we are updating this one. And I think this was key. I mentioned the greatest sign for the rapture. I want us to think about that. Signs for the end times are given to the Jewish people. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 22 says the Jews require a sign. Most of the time I say, listen, we're not looking for signs, we're listening for a sound. But this is very special because there is one thing that should be in our mind that helps us to understand when the rapture is going to take place, and that is a temple in the city of Jerusalem. Let's take a moment and discuss the Jewish temples. You know, God promised King David a temple, 2 Samuel chapter 7. That's called the Davidic covenant. Well, David was not allowed to build that temple, a permanent location to worship the Lord. The tabernacle was a transportable worship center. David wanted, when he was king of Israel, wanted to have a permanent location to worship the Lord. And the Davidic covenant was given to him, but because of his sin, his son, Solomon, was the one who built the temple. In fact, go to 2 Chronicles chapter 3. We'll see there right on Mount Moriah. That's where Abraham offered Isaac in Israel. Right there on Mount Moriah, King Solomon built that temple. It took him about 7 years to build it, but it was completed. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed that first temple. That's 2 Chronicles chapter 36. Just giving you a quick history of the temples in the city of Jerusalem. Zerubbabel brought the Jewish people out of the Babylonian captivity, about 50,000 of them. That's found there in Ezra chapter 2. And they rebuilt the temple. Ezra chapter 6 is the dedicatory service, the record of what happened after that second temple had been rebuilt in Jerusalem. Along come Herod's a couple of years later, Herod the Great, and he refurbishes the temple, made it the most beautiful temple. In fact, the rabbi said if you'd never seen Herod's temple, you'd never seen a beautiful building. That was in the times of Jesus Christ, of course, and Jesus Christ did worship at that temple, and in fact on that Temple Mount he did healing and he taught, and he's going to come back. Yes, he's going to come back and build his temple, because in 70 A.D., General Titus, as the Lord had predicted, destroyed the temple, not a stone upon a stone on the Temple Mount of that temple, that second temple that Herod made majestic for all the world to see and come to worship at. The Bible says Jesus will return, Zechariah 6:12. He will build the temple. The description for the Messiah's temple, the millennial temple during that 1,000-year reign, is found in Ezekiel chapters 40 to 46. But let me remind you something. Before we have the Messiah's temple, there is going to be a tribulation temple. Daniel chapter 9 and verse 27. Daniel the prophet says the temple will have its sacrifice cut off at the midway point. And Jesus Christ, in fact, confirmed that. Matthew 24:15, the Olivet Discourse, he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, get out of town. That's at the midway point when the Antichrist, according to 2 Thessalonians 2:4, walks into the temple, into the Holy of Holies, and claims to be God. Remember, Lucifer, who became Satan, who energizes the Antichrist, said he would be worshipped in Jerusalem. And 2 Thessalonians 2:4 indicates that will be the case. Revelation chapter 11, verse 1, John the Revelator is told to build a temple on the Temple Mount during that tribulation period. My friends, all the preparations have been made. My documentary indicates that everything that has to be done to put the temple up on the Temple Mount, except with the removal of that Dome of the Rock, and God has a plan for that. The Bible seems to indicate some of the things, a great shaking in the land, possibly an earthquake, or when that alignment of nations attack, they could take it out with a stray missile of some type. Anyway, that Dome of the Rock will be removed, and every preparation has been made. 28,000 priests are trained. They have all the implements. They have the furniture for the temple. They have the red heifer. They know where the Ark of the Covenant is. There's only one thing that has to happen before the tribulation temple. That's the rapture, and that could happen today. Having said that, nothing left for me to say, except let's keep looking up until